Welcome back again to Joe Stunner Boxing. I hope you're having a good week. As you're probably aware, the proposed rematch between Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois was supposed to be in February of 2025. And I don't think many of us thought that it would ever happen, simply because of the conclusive victory, absolute blitzing from Dubois inflicted on Joshua. Now, I think it's odds on that it simply won't happen, because Eddie Hearn has been talking about this, and he said, well, first of all, he said two things. First of all, he said that AJ is suffering from some minor injuries, and he said there's always niggles, and he had a few, so physically it's just a case of whether AJ is ready to do that, meaning the rematch with Dubois. But then he goes on to say, it would be frustrating if we made the Dubois rematch and Fury won against Oleksandr Usyk at their rematch, implying strongly that actually nothing will swerve Dubois, because we know what the result of that fight would be. The rematch there would almost certainly be repeat rather than revenge, although you never know. We can't completely rule out AJ. But if we did that, we'll miss out on the big bonanza against Fury, especially if Fury does beat Usyk and has three of the belts. Well, there you go. AJ's back in the game. Now, look, this is really unacceptable to me, because the idea that Joshua, let's say Fury was to beat Usyk, I make Usyk a strong favourite in the rematch. Not quite as much of a favourite as I would make Dubois in a rematch with Joshua. But let's say that Fury does beat Usyk for the sake of argument. You then have a situation where a guy who has been smashed to bits in the first fight suddenly finds himself in with, this, another multi-million-pound three-belt title shot. I know AJ's a two-time champion. He's had some very good wins in his career, and I think he is, for the most part, has been an underrated fighter. I think I can't imagine him coming back from that defeat to Dubois. Certainly not instantly, anyway. I mean, he'd need to rebuild. There has to be some sort of process, times against him because of his age. But the idea that he goes straight in to another blockbuster with Fury, having been blitzed by Dubois, seems to me to be, number one, incredibly unfair on Dubois, who was the winner in the first fight, and number two, simply a cash-in. And yes, I know that AJ versus Fury would do well financially. It should have happened already, in my opinion. We don't want it to be another one of those fights like AJ versus Wilder that never happened, that never ever happened. I think it's already past its sell-by date. So if Fury does beat Usyk, and again, that's not a foregone conclusion that Usyk would win. You can't rule out a guy like Fury, the size of the man, Again, another fighter I think is on the downside of his career, but you never know. You just never know. It's possible he could beat Usyk. I make Usyk a very strong favourite, but it's possible he could win. The idea that Joshua then goes into this great bonanza on the back of a 5-round mauling obliteration from Dubois, I just think it's rubbish. It's nonsense. It makes a mockery of the division, to be honest with you. Now, one person who's had something to say about Joshua not fighting in February is Andy Lee. And all he said was, Joseph Parker is ready. In other words, Joseph Parker will happily fight Dubois in February if AJ don't want it. And Frank Warren has made it clear that Dubois will fight in February. He wants him out in February. He said, whether it's against AJ or someone else, I don't mind, but I want him out there again. The biggest money spinner would be a rematch with, well, would it? I say that biggest money spinner we would think would be with AJ, but that first fight was so conclusive. Would it be a success, or would we be talking, the $1 billion success of Joker against the highly panned follow up Joker Folie à Deux. I don't know if you've seen both those films, but one was a colossal success and the other was a flop, essentially a flop, critically and commercially. Maybe this would be the equivalent of the same thing. You don't know, do you? You know, because people might say, "What, they're putting JJ back in there with Dubois? We all saw what happened the first time." I think they're relying on the casuals to swallow it for a second time. But Andy Lee has said, look, if he don't want it, and let's be honest, he doesn't want it, does he, Joshua? His team don't want it. They'll steer him away from that. Put Joseph Parker in there. And Joseph Parker, if you remember, had an incredible four-fight run, which, was it Jack Massey was the first fight? What was the second fight? I can't remember what the second fight was, but then he had victories over Deontay Wilder and Zhilei Zhang. And those 4 fights came off the back of being knocked out by Joseph Parker, by Joe Joyce. So Joseph Parker was definitely, he had momentum, to put it mildly. And that momentum has been slightly stifled a little bit because he hasn't fought for 7, 8, 9 months, whatever it is. Or is it less than that? Am I imagining that? I don't know. But he hasn't had a fight for a little while anyway. I'm not saying it'll be riddled with ring rust, but maybe he's been waiting for a title shot. And to be honest, he's earned it. He's absolutely earned it, hasn't he? He's shown a lot of improvement. He's shown good stamina. I'm not sure about his punch resistance. But yeah, okay, you know, Dubois versus Parker, I don't think anyone can dispute that that's a perfectly valid fight matchup. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So it would seem that that's going to be something that I think Andy Lee, who has close ties to obviously the Fury clan, I think Tyson Fury and Andy Lee's grandmothers are sisters. Is that the case? I may have that wrong. And of course, if Tyson Fury and the team speak to Frank Warren and say, we'd like, Joseph Parker, who's very, very close to him and Tyson Fury are very good friends. He knows the family. He stayed with them. He's well in with the Fury clan. They have some weight. They have some power. And if they speak to Frank Warren and say, come on, mate, give Joseph a chance against Daniel, that's only fair. And it would be only fair. I think maybe we could see that. But Dubois, of course, is the IBF champion. The IBF is notorious for pushing forward its mandatories, insisting on mandatories, regardless of what you think of their rankings. Some of those mandatories haven't really earned the shot, but at the same time, it's a good thing that they won't they won't allow their champions to go 2 years without a mandatory. They'll say, this person's a mandatory. We want that mandatory arranged, purse bids, whatever it is. And then if you don't, we're having the belt back. I kind of like that attitude. I do. I know people say we shouldn't strip a fighter. Titles are won and lost in the ring. But we've now got to this, enormously convoluted situation when we have 4 major belts. And therefore, then you get situations like with the WBC. One of the Charlos had the middleweight belt for 2 years without making a defense. And now he's a champion in recess and all this bullshit. Look, I get sick of all this crap. What I want to see people who have earned a shot, getting that shot. And okay, some of the mandatories are not great. I agree. Some of the rankings are not great. But at least the IBF forces the issue and insists that its rules are abided by. And if you're going to have a ruling body, I think that's the way to do it myself. So what do you think about Parker versus Dubois? Do you maybe you disagree? Maybe you don't think Parker should have a title shot. If not, why not? Maybe you think Dubois, AJ will go ahead. There's too much money for it not to. Let me know your opinion. Leave it below. I always enjoy reading your comments, like I keep saying, but I honestly do. And please subscribe to the channel if you're new and hit the like button. And of course, take care of yourselves. We will speak again very soon, I think. Bye for now.